to the weekend, but Saturday and Sunday are looking much brighter, with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long delays heading west towards Glasgow on the M8. The motorway is partly blocked. There's been an accident just north of the Kingston Bridge and the roadworks by Anston Cross. And right on the Cheshire-Staffordshire border on the M6, the two outside lanes are closed heading northbound from junction 16 to 17 north of Stoke-on-Trent past the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. It's really slow on the M4 westbound at junction 19, the M32 exit for Bristol. The inside lane's blocked off by a two-car collision. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there are eastbound queues. Junction 5 to 7 heading away from Southampton after a car breakdown. Finally in Dorset, a few miles to the west of Wareham, the A352, the Dorchester Road at Wool. That's closed following an accident that has damaged the level crossing barriers. And buses still in for trains between Bletchley and Bedford. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that.
£30,000 cash? Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Yes, you see, that is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon. Oh my God, this is amazing.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public.
Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
A very good evening to you. It's Wednesday, the 25th of September. I'm Martin Daubney, covering for Nigel Farage. Now, just a day after the Prime Minister promised he would house all military veterans in need, he admitted in an interview early today with GB News' political editor Christopher Hope that he could not guarantee that asylum seekers would not take priority in the housing queue. Veterans once again betrayed. And a shocking story that's been broken within the last few hours. 37 prisoners have been wrongly released under Labour's prisoner release scheme, with 5 still yet to be put back behind bars. And France has joined Germany's bid to get tough on migration, but its interior ministers are blaming Brexit, of course, for the small boat crisis, and are urging the UK to sign up to an EU asylum deal. All of that to come, but first, here's your news, and here's Mark White.
Good evening to you. The main headlines from the GB News Centre. And we begin with that breaking news that Martin mentioned at the top of his show. Dozens of prisoners have been freed from jail under the government's emergency release programme, released mistakenly, according to a source. at the Ministry of Justice, confirming that 37 people were released mistakenly on the 10th of September because their offences were wrongly logged. This meant these cases slipped through the safeguards, which are there to ensure those convicted of certain types of crime would not be released. Now, most of those freed by mistake, we're told, have now been returned to custody, but 5 prisoners are still at large this evening. The Prime Minister has told GB News there are legitimate concerns over migration levels. Sir Keir said he tended to agree that those levels were too high, but he told our political editor, Christopher Hope, that those concerns were no excuse for violence.
You understand, people have legitimate concerns about immigration, and we should debate them. And where they say to me, we think migration is too high, then I tend to agree with that. And the reason is because, well, among the reasons is because of the skills failure over the last years, and we need to fix that. Many people across the country are concerned about immigration, but they wouldn't for a minute go onto the street and throw a brick at a police officer. And I think it is wrong to pretend that they are one and the same. They are not.
The Prime Minister was speaking ahead of his speech to the United Nations, where he called for British nationals in Lebanon to leave immediately. The Prime Minister said 700 additional UK troops, aircraft and ships were on standby in Cyprus to evacuate Britons if necessary. Well, warning sirens sounded in Tel Aviv this morning as a missile was intercepted by air defence systems after it was detected crossing from Lebanon. Hezbollah says that the launch of the missile targeted Mossad headquarters. It claims the intelligence agency is responsible for assassinating leaders and for the massive pager bomb attacks in Lebanon last week. The Prime Minister is at the centre of fresh controversy over a decision to accept several weeks' accommodation at a luxury property in London. The accommodation was made available by Labour donor Lord Ali, and the stay was valued at around £20,000. Sir Keir defended his decision to accept the offer, saying it was because his son needed somewhere to revise for his GCSEs. He said the family home was besieged by journalists during the election campaign. Philip Schofield is returning to television 16 months after his departure from ITV's This Morning. The former TV star will appear on the Channel 5 show Castaway. The programme's producers released a promotional video as the 62-year-old told his followers on Instagram he'd spent 10 days alone on a desert island. Schofield resigned from ITV last May after he admitted an affair with a younger male colleague. Those are the latest headlines from the GB News Centre. We'll have more for you in an hour. Now back to Martin Dobney.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Mark White. Now, welcome to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man himself, Nigel Farage, tonight. Now, early today, our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, following his first party conference as PM, a conference laden with policy announcements and promises. And just 24 hours after his maiden speech at his first party conference as Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer is already treading a crack on a splintering promise. Yesterday, Sir Keir promised military veterans in need that he would put a roof over their heads. Let's take a listen.
We will repay those who served us and house all veterans in housing need. Homes will be there for heroes.
But today, the Prime Minister, known, of course, as Sir Flip-Flop, refused to say whether the veterans who fought for this country should be prioritised for council housing over asylum seekers.
It's a very important commitment that we've made because too many veterans who have, given so much to their country find themselves without a roof over their head. So because we've taken the difficult decisions on planning, decisions that were not taken for years, we can guarantee that they will have a roof over their heads. But it's not ahead of all other groups. This is unlocking, a real step forward on homelessness for many people who are homeless.
Well, joining now is our political editor, Chris Hope, all the way from New York. You've been there with Sir Keir Starmer, of course, at the United Nations earlier on today. Chris, thank you for joining us on the show. So yesterday, it was a standout policy, certainly for GB News viewers, for patriots, for Brexiteers, for the Red Wallers who may have lent their vote to the Labour Party in the last general election. Homes for heroes. Wow, at last, yes, let's get veterans to the front of the queue, except when you put that precise question to the Prime Minister today, Chris Hope, it appears it wasn't the case at all.
That's right, Martin. Welcome again to the banks of the River Hudson here in New York City. A few hundred feet away from me right now, Sir Keir Starmer's been meeting with world leaders. His battle, 24 hours after facing his members and supporters over the winter fuel payment being removed from November, he is now here trying to sort out a degree of issues on the world stage, notably evacuating Britons immediately from Lebanon, where fighting between Hezbollah fighters and Israelis is getting worse and worse, and then looking towards Ukraine and Russia, where Zelensky is here, the Ukrainian president. He's got his own idea to try and win that war with Russia, but he needs UK, US, the West's support. So big issues in his in-tray. That's what you sign up to when you're Prime Minister. But back in the UK yesterday, he set out that plan about veterans. He said to us that they'd be the front of the queue along with victims of domestic violence. In fact, when pressed hard on that, he said it wasn't quite clear if you would prefer veterans, say, over illegally arrived migrants here or even asylum seekers. So we'll wait and see the detail of that, but right now we can't guarantee that, and that's a big concern, I think, for veterans contacting GB News today.
Well, it's more than a big concern, Chris Hope. I've been speaking with them throughout my show earlier on. They feel utterly betrayed by this. They were dangled the prospect of at last being listened to, at last being prioritised. And when you specifically pushed Sir Keir Starmer on this, he could not guarantee that somebody arriving here illegally via a dinghy wouldn't be leapfrogged by a veteran. Surely Homes for Heroes means homes for heroes, not homes for illegal asylum seekers.
Well, the groups they're helping is not just veterans, but also domestic violence victims. Currently, Martin, the rules are that you have to have a link to an area to get onto a housing waiting list. That link is removed in certain key areas for veterans, as I say, and for those victims of domestic violence. And we said, well, what about those on the list, the asylum seeker list? And he couldn't say that there'd be a guarantee that would be more than certain groups. He said there'll be a requirement to make it a priority, but it's not ahead of all other groups. So we'll look at the detail of that and come back to GB News viewers. But on a wider point, Martin, I was struck by the fact the PM said he recognised that being concerned about migration, immigration, legal immigration, is not a far-right issue. In fact, absolutely not a far-right issue, which is something which GB News viewers and listeners have been saying to us for months now on the channel. They get frustrated. They are seen by the left as people who are right-wing or far-right, whatever you might call it, when actually all they're concerned about is issues of immigration, the pressure on public services. So are we seeing a gear change, a step change from this government, and are they listening more to GB News and its concerns? It's one to watch.
Well, that could be another nickname. It's a new gear, Keir. It's a new gear for GB News, because let's face it, on the stage yesterday, he was saying that these are thugs, that it was criminality, it was racism, echoed by Yvette Cooper. And then you spoke to Yvette Cooper straight afterwards. She went, oh, no, they're not actually far right. It's not that. And then Sir Keir Starmer again said that to you today. They need to make their minds up, Chris. And I also put it to you to ask Sir Keir Starmer, are you prepared to engage with the communities in the 7 most deprived towns across England where those riots happened, as you did post-2011 in Tottenham when you spoke to the black community? Are you prepared to go into receiver mode and listen to those people about their frustrations? What did the Prime Minister say to you about that?
He said we always engage, and I said to him, well, why not Angela Rayner? She's a community secretary. She's ideal to do that kind of thing. It's happened in the past. He said, yes, we're always engaging, always listening. He recognises net migration is too high. He may not agree with what he's being told, but at least he's talking to people. And I think that may take some of the concerns that we saw in August. people feel they are being listened to, that'll be a start. But there was some good news, Martin, in that your pint of beer after your epic shifts you put in for GB. It will not be banning last orders. There will be allowed that the hours locals are open. It will not be cut back as part of this increasingly nanny state version we're seeing from this government. But smoking in the garden, smoking in a beer garden, that in his upcoming...
OK, Chris, I think we're going to have to leave you there. I think your internet service has gone swimming with the fishes like so many other bad guys in that River Hudson before you. Thank you, Chris. Now, join me back in the studio is my excellent panel. It's a former Conservative MP and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Minister, Dennis McShane. Gentlemen, welcome very much.
Thank you very much.
To the studio. Kwasi, let's start with you. There's nothing worse, is there not, policy-wise, than dangling a carrot, something that people are thinking, wow, yes, like a desert needs the rain, veterans want to feel listened to. And today, after a cursory probe, it seems all is not the case after all.
So, look, I understand why he did this, but it doesn't fill one with confidence. When you're in the conference hall, and I've done this, you do a speech, you're speaking to your base. And as you saw, when he mentioned the very attractive and positive policy about veterans, he got a standing ovation. All the ministers, Yvette Cooper, dutifully stood up. And then, in the cold light of day, he couldn't make that guarantee. And I'll tell you why he can't. A lot of the provision for asylum seekers is dealt with on a local council basis. So he can't actually, he overpromised. He couldn't guarantee, and he's very loyally and very fastidious about this, he couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't house asylum seekers because a lot of those decisions are done on a local level. So that's why you get this disjuncture, you get this difference.
So why promise it in the first place?
That's the thing. I mean, you know, and he's not the first Prime Minister to do this, but he was literally playing to the crowd. And I'm afraid he said something that he couldn't deliver on because he can't guarantee. And that's why he couldn't guarantee it today. Because it's all very well for him in the conference hall to say, you know, houses for veterans, everyone will get, you know, a roof over their head. But in reality, given the way local government works, given the way that government works generally, he couldn't guarantee that. And that's why, I'm afraid, he essentially misled people.
Dennis McShane, it's an overpromise. And that's the best way of dressing this up. I had a veteran in the studio earlier on. He said he feels utterly betrayed by this. To dangle this out there and then said, actually, you won't be in front of an asylum seeker potentially because we can't guarantee that. We haven't quite checked with local authorities. Is an utter failure of policy. Why dangle it out there if you know you can't deliver it? Why not go with a fully gift-wrap package? Yes, veterans will be at the front of the queue. That's what the nation wanted to hear.
Your veteran you had in, and I listened to it yesterday, and I was a bit taken aback as a Labour historian because Homes for Heroes is what Lloyd George promised after Kwasi's a great intellectual in 1918. I thought, my God, where have they dredged this up from? You have got, in London today, just walking around Victoria, coming down here, homeless people begging on the streets. That is the inheritance from the 14 years of Tory rule. We've not built council houses, we've not built social houses, and I can imagine every mother who'd been booted out of her house by a violent attacking partner, looking after her children in dingy accommodation, and suddenly here's the Prime Minister announcing, you get to the back of the queue because I've got somebody else I want in the front of the queue. Now, I don't know if your veteran was actually a homeless veteran.
He deals with many homeless
he deals
veterans.
With them, OK.
So his job is to try and find them houses.
So he's an advocate. Well, that's fair enough. Now, I agree. I mean, we need so much more to do on housing, and wait and see when we force through, or the Labour government starts to force through, obliging councils to start building councils. Kwasi was there. I was there in my own constituency 20 years ago. Suddenly, you want to put up new social housing, any kind of housing, in rough scrub land. And my surgery was full of very slightly large ex-steel workers, ex-miners, wearing T-shirts saying proud to be a NIMBY.
Look, I agree with a lot of what you say.
I agree with that too. I don't know where the homes... I'm surprised.
The Homes for Heroes was a very odd thing because, as you say,
I agree.
Lord George said that when we had 1 million soldiers, more than 1 million soldiers, coming back after the First World War. So who had the bright idea in the Labour Party to resurrect resurrect that phrase.
And why did
I'm afraid it was misleading.
Why did Sir Keir, who, to put it mildly, is not a man given to lyrical rhetoric, why on earth he offered that out? I just don't know.
So I think it was a misjudgment.
Yeah,
I've given speeches.
It was a mistake.
And you're trying to razz up your base.
If you don't play around with veterans.
No, you don't.
They're not a pawn in a chess game.
And I think it was a political move that he did yesterday, and he quickly realised that he couldn't deliver on it. He can't guarantee what, the phrase homes fit for heroes. He can't do that.
But the numbers themselves are stark. So it's about 2,300 households in England are owed a homeless duty with a former member of the armed forces associated to their family. 12,000 illegal immigrants have come over the channel since Sir Keir Starmer has been made Prime Minister. They will all be guaranteed to get housing. It's a question of priorities. Keir Starmer's got his priorities wrong.
One second. I mean, I did a lovely interview about 2 years ago with Patrick Chisney, a great interviewer, and he went down to Datchet, which is down the Thames, and there was a asylum seeker hostel there, and he interviewed an officer from, I think, the Eritrean army who'd fled for his life. Otherwise, he'd been killed if he'd stayed in Ethiopia. You understand that, Kwasi? He arrived when Theresa May was Home Secretary, and here he was in 2022 or 2023. He still hadn't been interviewed, and that's the problem. That you've now got to say what you must be very careful on. If a nurse comes in and she's working in a hospital as a legal migrant,
Homes for Heroes.
I know.
That's where it went wrong.
Well, that's what I agree.
Because we've got these chronic problems.
Don't use Lloyd George cliches.
And so he came in. He did it was a populist pitch. He saw all the front bench like sort of machines like Jack in the Box rising up as one, thinking this was marvellous, and then within 24 hours he couldn't deliver on it.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll come back to the studio for more soon. Now, up next, some truly shocking stuff. 37 prisoners have been wrongly released in Labour's prisoner release scheme, with 5 of them still at large after their offences were wrongly logged. Another disaster for the Labour Party. That's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee, or do you fancy going to the pub, or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave. Look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on. Go to see what's going on in your area. Oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events. And there's so much going on. 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man, Nigel Farage. Now, earlier this month, thousands of prisoners were released in the Prime Minister's early release scheme, which aims to ease prison overcrowding. But within the last few hours, it's been reported that 37 prisoners jailed for breaching restraining orders were wrongly released under a system error, with 5 of them still presently at large. Sources at the Ministry of Justice have said that the prisoners' offences were logged under outdated legislation. Prior to the early release scheme, of course, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner said that victims were having sleepless nights as a result of this Labour Party policy. But the government reassured the public that offenders convicted under domestic violence-related crimes would not be released. But, of course, that has just mistakenly happened. Well, I'm still joined in the studio by my panel. There's the former Conservative MP and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Minister, Dennis McShane. Dennis, this time I'll start with you. It never rains, but it pours. I don't mean the weather in Liverpool. I mean, policy-wise, for the Labour Party, this is another absolute disaster. Early release, the optics of those guys smoking spliffs, having champagne outside prisons was bad enough. Now, these are specific categories of criminal. We were guaranteed by the government would not be released. 37 let out, 5 of them still at large. Another terrible day.
Yep, I don't want to think it's that, that mega. It's a problem, and frankly, the court authorities applied a law from 1998 that was completely overtaken by a new release law, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, passed indeed under the Conservative administration, and that's just sheer incompetence. Now, it's on the government's watch. The idea it's the Labour Party was sort of not releasing or were releasing them is just daft. The real problem, again, is the Conservatives sent everybody to prison but didn't build enough prisons.
You can't blame the Tories for this.
Hang on a second. This is the trouble. The released, I mean, it's astonishing. I don't think any country in the world is proportionally releasing quite as many prisoners as this government's been obliged to, because if it wants to put anybody else in, I mean, serious criminals, then the prisons are full. Now, did you hear Sir Keir say you should welcome the idea of new prisons in your community? Is this what we're going to do? Cover Britain with prisons? Because, frankly, our judges, we've sent 4 or 5 times as many prisoners as France, Italy, Germany combined. We're putting women, in particular, into prison for non-violent crime, not paying their BBC licence fee.
That's got nothing to do with the price of a pound of bananas.
No, those 37 men, I think it was men, have been released when they should not have been, because some bureaucrat, low-level bureaucrat, they say the Home Office is where every minister goes to his instant death, and it's been proved again. I hope a minister now could be...
Well, it's the Justice Department.
Well, it's the Justice Department.
So look, just before we go on, we don't know that they're all men. Most likely are. There may be some women in there.
95% of prisoners are men, I think, or 90%.
So, Kwasi, over to you.
So look, I think, trying to be fair, yes, there was a prison issue. We should have built more prisons. There were constraints on the budget. But let's not forget, this was a political decision. Once the government came in, they took the political decision, policy, to let these people out when they did. And I could bet you a bottom dollar, I think it was 1,700 that were released. You could have guaranteed that of the 1,700, there would have been a proportion that were released in a mistaken way, that shouldn't have been released. And that's the nature of bureaucracy. There are going to be mistakes. And I think that first of all, that the policy was wrong. They shouldn't have released as many as quickly as they did. And of all the things that Labour have done, talking to people in my former constituency, talking to people where I live in London, this has had more cut through than anything else. Because it affects people. Everyone knows someone who knows somebody who's been put in prison or who's had some brush with the law or been a victim. And this has had a really big cut through in a way that I don't think the Labour Party anticipated.
I just want to go over the potential of the people that could be still at large here, because including within these offences, they could be domestic abuse offences, which could be stalking offences, it could be controlling or coercive behaviours in an intimate or family relationship, it could be non-fatal strangulation and suffocation, or a breach of a restraining order, non-molestation order and domestic abuse protection order. Dennis, these are precisely the sort of dangerous criminals we were told, we were guaranteed, we thought, oh, they'll be tax dodgers, they'll be regular, run-of-the-mill, fluffy inmates. This is the precise opposite of what we were told, and you cannot blame the Conservatives for this. It happened today, and we've got 5 of these ragbags are still at large.
I'm not blaming the Conservatives one little bit. It was a mistake, and somebody should pay for it. And I feel sorry for Shabana Mahmood, who's made a very brave start on all the women in prison, which I think is a much more important announcement. But she's got to sort this out and find out who is responsible, because no government can afford to play around with these things. People are concerned and frightened. There's too much rough and ready bullying and bashing up. And it used to be all done under the carpet, especially domestic abuse. So he's smacking a woman around the chops. That used to be just part of
it was a different
life.
culture. It was a different culture.
Now we are rightly much more sensitive to it.
That's right.
Usually it's condemned as woke by too many people. I think on the contrary, it is very, very
But they're
important.
getting let out early.
I'm talking about the reasons those men were inside. I think probably they were men. 10, 15 years ago would not have happened. Now, Conservatives and Tories alike are taking this far more seriously. That's good. These men, not a huge number, have been released. I mean, they're not going to go out with machetes to start killing people, to be honest, Martin.
Well, how do you know?
Well, because anybody committed that kind of violent crime would not have been in that category.
I think, Dennis, but what will happen, and I can guarantee this is what's going to happen. God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen, but if any of these prisoners commits a serious crime in the next few months, life-harming, life-ending, God forbid, this will be a huge story.
And the chances of that are now greater tonight, was it?
I'm not predicting it, but I'm saying if it happens, this will be an enormous story, and the government will be under, and the ministers, relevant ministers, will be under huge pressure.
But don't you think, Kwasi, that the Home Office would have told every chief constable, everybody in the police service, you find those guys so damn quick and get them back inside?
Yeah, but the problem is that you've let out, I don't know what it was in the first batch, 1,700.
Yes.
By the end of next month, there'll be another 1,700, as I understand.
Well, I think that might be reviewed.
Yeah, and you've got a whole bunch of... And there's no way you can tag them all or work out what they're all doing.
You can, actually.
And it does take... All it takes is one or two...
Yeah, I do know.
Really evil... I will use that word.
Yes.
And then this policy will be totally discredited.
But a person can come out of prison after serving a sentence and the next day kill someone. So I think...
that's the point.
Well,
that is the point.
That's the point.
But the point is you do it after the proper end of your sentence and do something very bad. I do think... Get me wrong. I mean, Labour is making, in my judgment, in so many areas, what I call lots and lots of unforced errors.
Yep.
And
I agree with that.
That is, I say that what Labour needs now, what Sir Keir Starmer needs now, is a JAP response. It's not a racist term. It is Jonathan Powell, Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson, Chief of Staff, who isn't a story herself.
That's right.
A head of communications, and I don't even know who is the head of communications for the Prime Minister of the Conservative Party now, and then someone who's got an organic, wider view of
So
things.
look, I couldn't agree with you more. And I was part of government that didn't have a grip. I mean, with Liz Truss, Boris to a lesser degree, and it's obvious to me that there is no central coordinating force at the heart of government.
Okay. We have to move on, gentlemen. I have a statement to read out from Downing Street. A spokesman said this: "We're working with the police urgently to return the people who were sentenced using outdated legislation. They've all been monitored since their release, so they will be brought back into prison." Well, at least that's good to know. Thanks to my panel. And coming up next, unions vote in favour of reversing the winter fuel cut. Is this the beginning of the Starmer revolt from his fellow left-wing union comrades? And as France tightens its immigration rules, its ministers urge the UK to sign an asylum deal with the EU. Of course they do. Blaming the small boat crisis You've guessed it, on Brexit. All of that coming next.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Rain for many of us over the next 24 hours, heavy in places once again, but there will be a few clear spells around, particularly in the far south and the far north. As this low pressure sends its frontal systems north, they will stall across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England during the rest of the day. And that rain will turn heavy at times, especially for southeast Scotland, northeast England, where there is the risk of localised flooding through the day on Thursday because of the amount of rain we're expecting to fall. Further south, showers soon follow the main area of rain, a gusty wind and a mild night to come. A colder night for northern Scotland, where there will be some sunshine first thing on Thursday. Actually, Caithness, Sutherland, Western Scotland, the place to be for blue skies during Thursday morning. Showers, though, will start to move in from the north. Some patchy cloud around through central Scotland, but south of the central belt we've got a lot of damp weather, as well as for Northern Ireland we'll see outbreaks of rain, but the heaviest rain will be affecting North Wales and northern England. Like I say, there's going to be some significant accumulations in places, particularly the North York Moors and the Pennines through the morning and early afternoon. To the south, across parts of the Midlands, East Anglia, the south of England and South Wales, a mixture of sunny spells, but also some blustery showers and some rumbles of thunder as well. These showers are going to be fairly lively, but we've got mild air moving back in, 17 or 18 Celsius, whilst cold air affects northern parts of the country. That cold air spreads south during Friday after some heavy rain first thing through the M4 corridor into the M5 as well. Could cause some problems during the morning rush, but that rain does move through, and then brighter skies for many and a chill in the air as northerly winds arrive, so a cold start to the weekend, but Saturday and Sunday are looking much brighter with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man. Now, the government has reaffirmed its intention to cut the winter fuel allowance, and that's despite a vote at the Labour Party conference to reverse the controversial move.
Save the winter fuel! Save the winter fuel! Save the winter fuel!
And the motion was put forward by the Unite Union, which has accused the government of embarking on austerity Mark II. Although the vote isn't binding, of course, it does put further pressure on Labour over its decision to take away the benefits from 10 million British pensioners. Another one to get our teeth stuck into now, my excellent panel, the former Conservative MP and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Minister, Dennis McShane. Dennis, I'm going to start with you again because it's another lefty problem. And I want to ask you this. There's a lot of knives being sharpened for Keir Starmer at the moment. His popularity is tanking. He's minus 26%. He's the least popular Prime Minister at this point of his premiership in recent history. The storm clouds are gathering. 60% of voters in a poll yesterday don't think he'll even be the Prime Minister at the next general election. My question to you is, was this vote totemic of a potential revolt from the unions who might actually start going to war with Sir Keir Starmer? Are the unions revolting?
I don't think so. I think just before the break, Martin, you referred to the Prime Minister as a left-wing comrade Keir Starmer. Now, that would be very flattering to attach the words either left or comrade to the Prime Minister, because he's made his entire short career since he ran for office in being the very opposite. He went on, disappeared to New York, and Rachel Reeves went off. So it was a vote today at the end of the conference, absolute fag end of the conference. I listened to some of the debate yesterday, and what was striking were the number of Labour MPs who said, my mother is a pensioner, but she doesn't need this. We don't need it. And that there's quite a lot of mix and match over it. I mean, I think it's been poorly handled.
They didn't say that in all those years in opposition. They're saying 4,000 would die for Tories acting with the fuel allowance.
Well, it wasn't an issue because I don't think the Conservatives were proposing to change it. So we'll wait and see. On trade unions in generally, frankly, I follow them. I'm a very old trade unionist. I work with trade unions internationally. They are not the force they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. So I think most trade unions right now just think, look, this is far, far better than the alternative. There's some stuff coming in that we like. The winter fuel allowance, everybody would prefer it to have been handled differently, but we're not going to be all and end it all. I mean, every pensioner's going to get between £600 and £900 increase this year because of the change in terms in which pensions are paid out. And that's far more than the fuel allowance.
So you mentioned the fact that the Conservatives didn't consider this. I think it was debated, but we realised that politically this would have been a bridge too far. There's no way the Conservatives would have... I mean, it would have been a lot of heat on this, so we didn't touch it, rightly, I think. The second thing I thought was very ironic was that the reason why she's taken the winter fuel payment off pensioners is essentially to pay for the public sector increases.
These precise unions that may be causing
And that was the irony, was that they voted it down. So I'd love to hear from them how they think they're gonna we can pay for their pay increases.
Because that £10 billion that was found for the unions, actually, teachers, that was Unite.
That's
and they were repaid today by voting down the winter fuel allowance.
Exactly. And the third thing I'm going to say about this is that
they lost the vote, by the way. Let's stress. I mean, it was a gesture. It was nice to see all those guys there with their fists in the air and shouting.
No, but the conference voted against the government.
The conference itself did, but it has no impact at all.
And the third thing I'd say, I think this isn't the end of what we're going to hear from the trade unions. I think this Parliament, and certainly the next few months, will be dominated by the public sector pay round. So you've already had the nurses earlier this week reject what was a 5% increase year on year when inflation's at 2.2%. And I think more public sector unions will be emboldened
and I wonder if that's
to push the government on this.
I wonder if that's a fair point, because Wes Streeting today, I will not back down on NHS reform. But the unions might have something to say about that.
That's why. I mean, one of the reasons, and there are many why perhaps we had the huge change, and we've now got 413 Labour MPs. I've forgotten how many Conservative
121.
121.
Which is the lowest ever. But it's a very volatile electorate.
Oh, tell me about it. Volatility all over Europe, all over the world. But one of the reasons that the Conservatives were so badly punished was because of their, I don't want to fight the election campaign, but the arrogance of saying nobody gets a pay rise. The teachers don't, the train drivers don't, the nurses don't, the doctors won't. Labour has made good those years of really foolish, very old. You wouldn't have had Harold Macmillan or any old Tory of a previous generation being so unkind to the people who deliver vital public services. Trade unions as a real problem. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, Kwasi, but my instincts and experience is they're not the force they once were, and the majority of TUC-affiliated unions just want a stable, no-strike environment for the next few years.
I'm not sure you're going to get that.
We'll hold you to that. OK, gentlemen, we have to move on. Now, France's new Interior Minister has pledged to expel illegal immigrants who have broken into the country amid moves aimed at toughening law and order. Now, along with Germany's Interior Minister, they're urging the UK government to enter an asylum deal with the European Union after they claim Brexit has exacerbated the small boats crisis. Isn't it astonishing, Kwasi Kwarteng, how the European Union member states who can't control their own borders for love nor money, apart from the exception of Italy, who are actually getting tough and turning back boats, are now strengthening their own borders and blaming Brexit.
So what's going on? And Dennis knows far more about Europe than I do, but I know a little bit. You've got German elections next year, and it's very clear to pretty much everyone that the centre-left coalition, which is what it is, will probably be replaced. So heading into the election, I think you can tell that they're going to be very, very tough on immigration, and they want to sort of essentially ward off some more right-wing parties, and some of them are pretty unpleasant, actually, on this particular issue. This is pure politics, as far as I can see. And in France, you've got a similar situation. Macron, almost totally inexplicably, blew up his majority, called a general election, and ended up with total chaos. And his government, our old friend Michel Barnier, is now the Prime Minister. And essentially, he's reliant, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, on the far right. So again, you're in a situation where the internal politics of these countries is leading them to address an issue which, like us perhaps, they've neglected. And that's what's going on.
I think you're right. I spoke to a French journalist earlier on who said this is purely performative. It won't get entrenched in law. It's just sabre-rattling to try, as you said, Kwasi, to try and keep the lid on the far right. The trouble is, France has 10 borders with other countries, and it's saying you're breaking into our country if you come without paperwork. Well, Nigel Farage has been saying that about this country for years. He was called far right. Is this far right? And what on earth is going to happen to Britain if they're stopping going to France? It might be some crumb of comfort for them not going to Calais and then coming to Britain.
Well, Italy, you mentioned, has got 283,000 undocumented asylum seekers, illegal asylum seekers, if you like, waiting to be processed. We've got about 56,000. We've got this huge protection of the channel. Germany has got almost as many asylum seekers as half the population. The rest of Europe combined, partly because of Angela Merkel's stupid decision to allow 1 million Syrian people to come in from the failed state of Syria. And why is Syria a failed state? Because of David Cameron's foreign policy blunder. All right, OK, I know you don't like to be reminded.
No.
But, I mean, Cameron and Sarkozy went and turned nasty countries, Syria and Libya, into complete failed states, no law and order, no police, no border control at all, and we're still suffering from the consequences. Now, I read that in the Times. It's written by a dear friend. It was slightly, shall we say, well, I don't want to say made up. It wasn't made up. Everybody in Europe is asking Britain, will you look at safe asylum routes, which we have to put up with?
Well, we've got Ukraine, Afghanistan.
No. Ukraine and Hong Kong are completely different. We have got people moving from all over the world, just as the United States has, and the richer countries, Japan has now, the richer countries of the world are taking in people who are just getting on a boat, getting on a plane and arriving in disappearing.
So I know...
But that's all. I don't think... I mean, in a sense, every country at the moment's got a veto on all of this. And as Kwasi absolutely rightly says, the Germans have just closed their borders, causing nightmares with Poland.
So look, when I know German politicians as you do. This is not the natural SPD Green playbook. No. What they're terrified of is a federal election in September where you've got the AfD, the far right, whatever you want to call them, and you've got the CDU. They're the top two parties right now.
No, not the CDU.
Gents, we have to move on.
The AfD lost the election last Sunday.
No. The CDU.
Gents, we've got to move on. We've got to move on. The fact
they're attacking right.
Well,
their rhetoric is attacking right.
What they're all doing is trying to steal the clothes of the right while not delivering anything concrete. That's the point. Gents, got to move on now. Coming up, have the police crossed the line after they banned a badge commemorating officers killed in the line of duty? I'll discuss that with the top copper next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home. My mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, you know, like degrees.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man himself. Now, the Metropolitan Police have crossed the line after they banned a badge commemorating officers killed in the line of duty. The thin blue line badge, which is sold by the charity Care of Police Survivors, which raises cash for the families of officers killed on duty, has been forbidden in the Met's new uniform policy. Signed off by the Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, the policy bans officers from wearing badges, lanyards or patches which advertise causes, beliefs or charities. Now, the timing of this is terrible because it comes on the day that a memorial was unveiled by the Metropolitan Police Chief of Sergeant Matt Ratana, who was shot and killed in Croydon Custody Centre in 2020. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation, Rick Pryor. Rick, welcome to the show. So the timing of this is one aspect. It comes on a day when it should be commemorating police officers who fell. Of course, Sergeant Matt Ratana tragically taken away. Have they made a complete and utter error by getting rid of this badge?
Well, first of all, I would concur with the timing point. I was at the ceremony today, unveiling the memorial stone for Sergeant Ratana, and it was a beautiful ceremony in remembrance with Sergeant Ratana's partner Sue and Luke's son, his son Luke, who had flown all the way from Australia. It was a very touching ceremony today. It was, at my understanding, it was announced on September the 18th, which happened to coincide with the anniversary of the appalling murders of Fiona Bone and PC Nicola Hughes from Greater Manchester Police. So I would concur with the timing, and it does feel awkward for me to be on here tonight on such a day where I've been to such a touching and touching memorial event, remembering Sergeant Ratana. In relation to blue line imagery itself, one has to remark that the blue line imagery is commonly accepted amongst police officers and the public as demonstrating camaraderie amongst the police family in support of a number of police charities, including supporting the survivors of officers killed in the line of duty. To my understanding, it's not representative of any specific cause, belief or charity, rather a general commonality among police officers, police staff, police community support officers, special constables and the wider police family.
So, as you say, it's a terrible, terrible state of affairs, Rick, that we have to even be discussing this on what should have been a sacred day of remembrance. And nevertheless, here we are. Could I get your take then? You say this isn't politically aligned. It's more of a show of respect for the fallen by those who still serve. In that respect, have the Metropolitan Police made a complete blunder by scrapping this badge?
Well, it certainly hasn't gone down well with the membership. My colleagues who are extremely saddened and angry to hear the news. You'll see many of them on public aid serials with the badge on their rucksacks or displayed discreetly on their body armour. And again, they're typically posted online on social media whenever there's a death of a police officer. Again, as a mark of remembrance and of respect. So yes. My colleagues are extremely saddened and somewhat angered by this policy change.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us, giving us your thoughts. And I'm sorry we have to intrude on this conversation on this day of all days. Rick Pryor, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And I'm still joined by my panel, but I'm going to cut now straight to somebody who's hoved into view. Of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation, following this show. What's on your menu?
Well, once again, Sir Keir Starmer. I thought we would run out of this story, but he's decided to throw his son under the bus. And we know the old line, the sins of the father shall be visited upon the son, but I never thought that the sins of the son should be visited upon the father. It seems very unfair to treat his son in this way, having always said he wouldn't use his family. And then the dates don't match. So there's something wrong. He used a very expensive apartment. He used it well after GCSEs had finished, and it's all the fault of his son. And then somebody quizzed him about Sue Gray's pay, and he got frightfully tetchy. He said, I don't have to answer about individuals' pays. Prime Ministers always have to answer about the people who are working for them. So this sleaze story gets worse and worse.
And he always maintained, keep my kids out of politics, it's my private life. And then here we are, it's his sick note for why he took this bung on this £18 million mansion in the middle of Covent Garden. And as you said, the dates don't add up because the exams had already started. What father would move their kid into
in the middle
a mansion
of
block in the middle of their exams? Does not add up. Jacob Rees-Mogg next, of course, State of the Nation, 8 till 9 p.m. Thank you very much to Kwasi Kwarteng, Dennis McShane for joining me on the show. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6 p.m. and I'll be back on this show tomorrow night if you haven't had enough of my ugly mush. Next is State of the Nation. But before that, here's your weather and here's Aidan McGibbon. Have a great evening.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Rain for many of us over the next 24 hours. Heavy in places once again, but there will be a few clear spells around, particularly in the far south and the far north. As this low pressure sends its frontal systems north, they will stall across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England during the rest of the day. And that rain will turn heavy at times, especially for southeast Scotland, northeast England, where there is the risk of localised flooding through the day on Thursday because of the amount of rain we're expecting to fall. Further south, showers soon follow the main area of rain, a gusty wind and a mild night to come. A colder night for northern Scotland, where there will be some sunshine first thing on Thursday. Actually, Caithness, Sutherland, Western Scotland, the place to be for blue skies during Thursday morning. Showers, though, will start to move in from the north. Some patchy cloud around through central Scotland, but south of the central belt we've got a lot of damp weather, as well as for Northern Ireland we'll see outbreaks of rain, but the heaviest rain will be affecting North Wales and northern England. Like I say, There's going to be some significant accumulations in places, particularly the North York Moors and the Pennines through the morning and early afternoon. To the south, across parts of the Midlands, East Anglia, the south of England and South Wales, a mixture of sunny spells, but also some blustery showers and some rumbles of thunder as well. These showers are going to be fairly lively, but we've got mild air moving back in, 17 or 18 Celsius, whilst cold air affects northern parts of the country. That cold air spreads south during Friday after some heavy rain first thing through the M4 corridor into the M5 as well could cause. And then brighter skies for many and a chill in the air as northerly winds arrive, so a cold start to the weekend, but Saturday and Sunday are looking much brighter with highs of 15 or 16 Celsius.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having an extra £3,000 each month to play with. And because it's totally tax-free, you get to keep every penny and spend it however you like. We could be paying for your entire year until 2025. How amazing would that be? For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Britain I grew up in was the most peaceful, gentle society that has ever existed. That has been destroyed.
Opinion polls show immigration is the #1 concern to the British public. Are you proud to be British?
Yeah, I'm ever so proud.
My name is Stephen Edgington, and in this documentary, I want to find out how Britain became a nation of immigrants. Immigration, the truth, available at gbnews.com.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. Another day and another dodgy donation-related scandal for the Reverend Starmer. And today he throws his son under the bus after the revelation that he used, that's Lord Starmer, Sir Keir, used Lord Ali's £18 million penthouse during the election campaign. We'll also be going live to New York to hear from Colonel Richard Kemp as the Prime Minister calls for a ceasefire at the UN General Assembly. Immigration Minister Dame Angela Eagle